皆さんこんにちは。はい、本日は IBS クリプトジャパンブロックチェーンウィークサミットにお集まりいただき誠にありがとうございます。私本日の司会進行を務めさせていただきます園丸と申します。普段はですね YouTuber やインフルエンサーとして活動させていただいており、また日本のポップカルチャーを通じて Web3 を広めるアイドルユニットクローンガールズというメンバーでもあります。皆様どうぞ本日はよろしくお願いいたします。ありがとうございます。さて IVS も本日最終日ということで最後までぜひ楽しんでいってください。それではですね、またこちら本イベントなんですが英語と日本語のセッションがあるのですが、セッション中は AI を使った同時翻訳を行いますのでご安心してご参加ください。またタイムスケジュールにつきましてはお手持ちのパンフレットもしくは IVS クリプト公式ウェブサイトからご確認いただけます。また会場にはメディアの撮影が入りますことをあらかじめご了承ください。お写真動画の撮影は大歓迎でございます。ぜひ本イベントのハッシュタグJBW2024ハッシュタグ IVS クリプトをつけてどんどん SNS にご投稿ください。はい、ということでですね、早速最初のセッションに移りたいと思います。最初のセッションはちょっと英語ですので英語でご紹介させていただきたいと思います。 First session is Investment Frontier VC Perspective on Current Web3 Gaming. We have invited outstanding guests who are leading the forefront of the Web3 gaming industry. Without further delay, let me introduce our speakers. Please welcome Tommy Chan, Executive Director at Spartan Capital. 皆さん拍手でお迎えください。ありがとうございます。Next speaker is Jora Fan, Investment Principal at Bitcraft Ventures. Next speaker is Jack, Head of Game Research at Delphi Digital. And next speaker is An Chen, Partner at IBC. Next speaker is Andy Cho, Chief Corporate and Business Development Officer at Yale Games. Moderating this session is Andy Cho. それではよろしくお願いいたします。Thank you.
All right, looks like we can get started. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the VC's perspective on Web3 gaming. I head up corporate and business development for YGG, but maybe we can just kick off by some introductions. Anne, do you want to start first?
Hi everyone, this is Anne from IVC. Well, Web3 VC originated from Japan and invested globally. As for our Fund 1, we have invested in over 200 portfolios, have actually in GameFi. And YGG is actually our first investment we have ever made. And this conference is actually arranged by IVC, and hope you enjoy the conference this time.
Hello everyone, I'm go by Jackal, otherwise known as Joe. I lead gaming research at Delphi Digital, also involved on the VC side. Yeah, happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan. I'm a principal at Bitcraft Ventures. We're a gaming fund. I lead the Web2 and Web3 investments on the Apex side.
Hey everyone, Tommy Chang here. I'm the Executive Director and Head of Gaming at Spartan Capital. I oversee one of our funds that's more focused on gaming and consumer crypto applications. Some of the portfolio companies include, Moonville that also has a booth here, as well as Memeland. So feel free to check it out.
Awesome. So I think to just kick everything off, maybe we can just start with what is your perspective on sort of the state of Web3 gaming? This is now my third year at IVS, and 3 years ago we were looking at a lot of decks. Now we actually see the games launching. So I think that's really exciting. Yeah, and maybe you can kick us off with that.
Yeah, I think for the past 3 years, of course, the game quality has improved a lot. A lot of tokenomics has always been still in the searching stage, but at least more innovation actually still coming out from the games. And I think that a lot of these past 3 years, after like Axie took off, it actually encouraged a lot of even like Web2 developers and even like the Web2 top studios are exploring into like a Web3 elements to integrate into games. As for the Japan markets, even like Square Enix, I think they just announced their Web3 plan, and so is like Konami's, and even like Sega and also Bandai Namco, they have a Web3 divisions on study looking into Web3. So I think it's still in the progress on the getting to like moving from the searching stage to until like on the maturing stage. So, but at least like on the game content qualities, it has improved quite a lot compared to like 3 years ago. Back to like only the P2P like mode, yeah, and also like the play to earn. So I think that there's still a lot of room for improvement, but it's still like an ongoing process, and more like even like bigger players are actually joining this like Web3 journey.
Awesome. Joe, do you have a similar perspective here?
Yeah, not too much to add, but I think definitely still in the middle of this experimentation stage. It's great to see real games actually launch, and the quality bar has definitely raised a bunch since like things started to kick off with Axie. I think right now, this year, and we'll talk about this a bit later on, but like this year has been an interesting one, whereas the sort of the meme at this point of like bringing on Web2 gamers may not have been fully realized yet, and memes are just like going crazy. So I think there's a lot of introspection of like how exactly can we leverage some of these speculation markets within the games. How can you add on meta layers that maybe not your typical gamer would be interested in participating in. But yeah, the more experiments, the better, I think. The closer we get to something that can really be sustained at a large level. So I'm excited. Long-term bullish.
Yeah, Jonathan, I know BigCraft's very involved in Web3 gaming, so would love to understand kind of, how you guys are thinking about it.
I think for us it's very clear that the quality of the deal flow in the past like 1 year, 1.5 years is a lot higher than 3 to 4 years ago. The kind of like developers who are coming into Web3 to build games, the level of understanding of Web3 that these guys have, and the iterative processes that they have to think about how do we use Web3 technology to unlock novel use cases in gaming in Web3 that you cannot use in Web2. So I think in maybe 3 years ago in the last cycle, it was still it's still very experimental, like Jacko mentioned. Today it's still experimental, but I think you see a very clear upgrading in the level of knowledge that these people have. And we're starting to see people use Web3 in a very novel way to create new gaming experiences that we have not seen before. Sometimes they are more financialized, like Jacko said. Sometimes they are less financialized. And it's oftentimes, either way, I think those are both pathways that lead you towards like normie adoption, right? And we're seeing a lot more of that, a better quality in that. So I think longer term, quite interested and quite excited about the prospects.
Actually, Tommy, I'm curious, from your perspective, have you seen, I guess, an inflection point, a lot more funding this year compared to last year? That's kind of sort of what I'm seeing, but, perhaps, your perspective there.
Yeah, so agree with what Joseph and Jonathan covered earlier. Definitely still in experimental phase. But if you look at earlier this year, we actually have some games like Pixels and Heroes of Mafia with some decent traction and generating, I think, some user numbers. However, with the recent market correction, I think Pixel Mafia down between 80 to 90%. I think we're really in the phase of we really need good games to come into the market, good games that people actually enjoy playing and can actually bring in revenue on chain or off chain. I think in terms of where we're going from now, I think continue more experimentation. We're seeing the takeoff of some of the mini games, and whether or not we can replicate a kind of a WeChat mini game ecosystem, that's still unknown. We're also seeing some kind of games utilizing the PWA format to make the onboarding process more seamless. So I think it's still a bit experimentation over there, but definitely I think we definitely need to see more good games being developed.
So I think I'll shift to understanding maybe each of your organizations or internally kind of your framework or investment thesis around Web3 gaming. If there are any companies here looking to raise money, like what are the key criteria you look at when evaluating investments?
I think first is like content is always the key for us. So even you're doing like a Web3, it shouldn't be an excuse that you are making a less like inferior like quality games compared to like Web2 games. And as well as like in order for a Web2 developer to move to Web3, you still need to be adding probably a crypto native teams and probably to understand what drives for the engagements and also after your token launch, what drive for the token liquidities. So you probably still needed to be working a lot with the communities. Yeah, a lot of our like projects feedback, well, actually just mentioning is actually they feel it's much harder working in Web3 compared to Web2 because like beside the game content, which is the key, you have to have first engagement with the users, but later you also need to be managing your community's expectations on the token flows and also all the game mechanics. And at the same time, you still need to be managing all your budgeting on the development part. So it's a lot of things like when we're actually making investments are considered, but always like we are looking for like innovations in the gameplay. So for any of the gamers, like whether you are seeing like Web2 games or Web3 games, at least like someone want to play it. So that will be the first key. And then later, once there's an emotional attachment and also a retention on the games, then we think that there needed to be like a further steps working on the crypto Web3 elements. So it's a range of different kind of like criteria we look into, but like the Web3 and also Web2's like tokens, or if you are doing the NFTs, you probably still needed partners who will really understand how like the Web3 elements part works.
Yeah, Joe, do you also think it's content first, or
Yeah, I'd say. So I think if you're going to break it down into content versus infra, there is still, although the infra is a lot better than it was 3 years ago, there's still definitely a need for more, better, like frictionless infra. And on that side, I think we would probably lean a bit more to experienced teams who are either building specifically for the space or bridging existing infra stacks over to like a more democratized, decentralized structure. Content investments are so hard, man. Like, more shots on goal has been like typical approach for many, right? When we're looking at teams, I think you can break it down into like existing incumbents who are who have a very specific skill set that is has a lot of synergies for blockchain games. I think a good example of that would be our investment in CCP, taking EVE Online and like bridging it over to Project Awakening. But I think aside from those like very select examples, we've seen a lot more interesting implementations of blockchain from like small scrappy startups. There was like this wave of attention from like big Web2 incumbents, publishers who like came in and kind of just slapped NFTs or a token onto an existing model. At the time, it was like, it made headlines, it was quite exciting, but I think in retrospect, people are looking back and thinking, yeah, okay, well, that didn't quite work. And so, yeah, like, I think small, scrappy startups who have like a fundamental understanding of what makes blockchain exciting, there's tons of opportunities there. And so I think the more active VCs can be in like funding these teams to go back to the original point, to like experiment and figure out what works, what doesn't, it's going to be better for the space overall.
So it's like experienced teams, but that really understand the Web3 world, right?
The understanding is critical, yeah. Like so many times we've seen like teams who really get gaming, and that's obviously incredibly important, but then like you try to explain to them about like, I don't know, certain DeFi primitives or breaking down the different like player cohorts within or user cohorts within Web3, and it all kind of just goes over the top of their head. So there's definitely a balance there between like overly speculative or like a bit too vanilla like Web2 gaming. But yeah, those that are willing to like take risks and experiment, I think are the ones that should get the funding.
John, anything to add to that? So we've got content first, team, I don't know. Yeah.
It's probably a very big topic, longer conversation. But I think before I even go to that piece, I just like to say that I think if you just listen to this panel, you'll quickly realize that when you pitch to a VC, you're not really pitching to a VC, you're pitching to individuals. So we have like our firm strategy and thesis, but each of us are also human. We have our own preferences. And I think number one advice I would give to any founder is like, go understand what this guy likes, what his preference is, what kind of like startups he has backed, so you can actually speak to what he wants to hear. That's the first thing. And going back to maybe how Bigcraft thinks about the opportunities, I think the three pillars of like the investment thesis are market, founder, product. So we always want to look for people who are playing into a big market. If you are the number one player in a small market, then your maximum revenue is always capped. Number two, is your product able to find to expand the market that you are playing into? Is the product able to be number one? And that ties in very closely with like who you are as a founder. Why are you the one that's meant to win this category? If you look at League of Legends, for example, the people that created League of Legends were not game producers, but they were massive like MOBA nerds, right? And then a lot of people realized and recognized that, hey, these guys are so fanatical about like MOBA that they could be the ones to conquer the market. So just some simple examples, quick analogies of how we think about it.
Awesome. Tommy?
I mean, for us, it's really simple, right? Do we think the team actually have the ability to create a game that people actually love to play? But obviously, there's a lot of nuances to this question. Like some things we consider, I think I'll add to what others kind of say. So for us, what's really important is the sizing of the market. So the theme of this game, a lot of projects we have spoken to, they're trying to build the next like Yuansen, the next like Honkai Star Rail, or the next like Call of Duty, right? But the market for that is already quite saturated, and it's very hard to outcompete this like AAA studios. You need a tons of marketing budget. You need a tons of development budget to build something as good at these quality that people actually enjoy, right? So I think sizing the market is actually important. You have to find your own niche, and you have to be really good at that niche. And on top of that, creating a game loop that's unique enough and that engaging enough that people would like to interact. And on top of that, whether it makes sense to use Web3 and implement Web3 technology, and whether the tokenomics is robust enough to drive enough token demand and token sync to the game, and create enough like a big enough like on-chain economy outside of the off-chain economy. And yeah, obviously, does the team have enough capital to build this game? If not, can we help them raise? Can they raise enough capital in a market like this to build the game that they want to? I think that's also really important to us.
Yeah, on the topic of market, we're so early. We've talked about experiments with a lot of games now. I think one question I'm curious about for the audience is actually how many of you actually played a Web3 game? Please raise your hand. Okay. A small percentage, right? And so, there's 3 billion gamers worldwide, a lot of people playing Web2 games. Maybe at the height of some of these games, we're getting 1 million DAUs, right? So at the very most. So I'm just, trying to understand what's the, what needs to happen, or what's the reason why, adoption has still, not happened yet.
Yeah, I think as I just mentioned, like we've been very looking into like the contents, and I think that no matter you are doing like if you're just like doing a pure like a speculative projects, then you can just like focusing on the tokenomics, doing a lot of like the airdrops, incentive, like play to earn for your players. But if you really want that like a lasting, like your players to stay with you, and then like turn really at the end, like your token into a real, actually a utility token inside the gameplay, then the content is still the key. So every time when we're actually evaluating the games, we needed to see that there actually a certain innovations that's been popping out of the game design. So you have probably in the Web3s, like we probably see 1,000 like a shooting game, like of FPS or like third-person shootings, 1,000 like a car trading games. But each of them is just like a lot of them is just looks so similar, and I can't really even like you are not incorporating for the Web3 element. It just in terms of like the quality of the gameplay, not just the art or rendering part, but the gameplay itself, it makes really not much of the the fun part of the game. So I think that when we look into games, there has to be some kind of the fun part of all the games. That's even like be outstanding than any of the games actually currently in the market for the probably the game to be sustainable and also players to be first engaged to play and also stay for long term. And later they probably would be like try to use a token inside the gameplay. So the project itself is not probably just like a 6 month after like token is listed, everyone got the airdrop, everyone just dumped the token, and the community just leave for another like games that actually do the same thing over and over. So yeah, so I think that like content, like as I just mentioned, is still like being a focus for us. But of course, other tokenomic Web3 elements design are also equally important if you are designing a Web3 game.
So it really comes down to game's fun. Fun is very like abstract term, right? And so, Joe, you mentioned EVE Online, right? I'm just curious, kind of like, do you agree with that? Do you think it's because some of these games, haven't intrigued people enough, or like, they have to be on par with, Call of Duty or some of these other games? Like, what are the barriers here to getting that mass adoption?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is a hot take. I don't think fun. Excuse me. I don't think building fun games is necessarily enough. I think a lot of people it's great marketing, right? Like we're gonna onboard the next billion users into Web3. Like, get hyped. Like, give us your money. I think a lot of these teams launched a game, and in many cases it had a really fun core loop, but they didn't know that they were or didn't fully realize that they were entering this highly competitive, frictionful UA landscape, right? Forget Web 2, Web 3, like distribution is a huge challenge right now. And so there are examples of like breakout hits, like Lethal Company comes to mind, Power World, Helldivers, that do fit that like mold of fun first, and you're going to onboard a ton of players. But at the same time, there is a multitude of other elements, like highly viral, great UA campaigns. And so I don't think it's just like one size fits all. Once we've seen like the 10th TCG, there comes a point where we got to like kind of stand and look back and think, okay, who exactly are these titles targeting? And if targeting a Web 2 audience with like well thought out UA campaign is not well suited, or there isn't the budget for it, like to compete with the large publishers of the world, then teams can go back and try to experiment with token incentives. I think the Telegram ton boom right now is a good example of how token incentives have become like this crazy flywheel for UA growth. I do agree with Anne though that once the token drops for a lot of these games, I think it's game over. And then like the mercenary hits will go over to the next one. So I think, yeah, fun first is like a bit of a meme. It goes without saying, right? In terms of actually onboarding these users, it comes with a mix of like product market fit, taking new approaches, whether that be with TikTok or like influencer marketing. I think what in the Web 2 world, like what people at like Mad Mushroom are doing, where it's like influencer groups mixed with publishing houses, is going to be something that becomes increasingly important over time. But yeah, I don't think it's really a Web 3 problem. I just think a lot of these teams that memed out this like next million onboarding meta just didn't really know what they were talking about when it came to like UA. I don't know, maybe hot take. I don't know.
Fair enough. So distribution, UA, fun. Jonathan, anything else to add here?
I'd say the answer is it goes back to understanding who your target market is and then finding a balance of what are the Web3 elements you want to incorporate into the game. Let's say you are building an MMORPG, for example, right? And you want to have a very token-heavy, very trading-centric kind of economy. Then it kind of works out because you are going to address a target market that is very used to that. But if you try to do that with a target market of like people who are playing like a match-3 game, and then like the target average median user is like basically like my mom, maybe it doesn't work out, right? So I think it's a balance of like how much Web3 do you need to add into a game. It doesn't mean that every game needs to have immutability, interoperability, blah, 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 right? I give you a good example. There's this company that I really like. It's a Hashed company. It's incubated by Hashed. It's a K-pop idol group called Triple S, right? And their application, all you can do is you buy the cards of the idols that you like, $3 per card, you pay in fiat. You don't have to use tokens at all. But the only integration with Web3 is the moment you buy any card, you get in-game tokens, which is actually on-chain tokens, and that gives you governance over what you do with the K-pop group. Like what songs do they sing, where do they go perform, right? And that is a very good example of streamlining the Web3 experience directly to a user base that is probably a lot more normie than most Web3 users. And that product in the past couple of months, I think they sold like 3 million cards at $3. So it's like 9 million in revenues now. And it's like the DAUs are just like that. Just check out the Dune Analytics dashboard. And that's one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is you can go very on-chain, you can go very DeFi primitive, but it always depends on who is your target user and what are you trying to achieve with this product.
That's interesting. I guess, Tommy, we've talked about kind of different types of games here, trading card games, sort of this K-pop case study. Are there any types of games that you think would facilitate sort of the onboarding better than others? Yeah.
Well, I think to me, for Web3 games in particular, I would say the audience. There's two audience. This one is the like very Web3 native audience, and that's kind of a lot of the fully on-chain gaming are tackling that kind of audience, and also some games like utilizing PWA format, that's building kind of like the Web3 version of Monopoly Go or like Coin Master. That's kind of catered to people who like to gamble, like to spend, and like to they don't have to spend too much time in the game, and they can earn money. So there's some experimentation on that front, and we're seeing some early success. And then the other audience will be the mainstream audience. And these are the games that kind of like taking the Web 2.5 approach. And I think ultimately to onboard the masses, these will be the games that actually will be onboarding the masses. But I think at the moment, I think for our space, I think there's still a little bit too much emphasis on the speculation and the incentive design front. And I think because we all know that the public perception for like Web3 game is not too positive at the moment. So to solve that, I think we need to be less focus on the speculation front. Like once tokens drop by 80-90%, I think people's interest for entering into the space will be lower.
Got it. Just given time here, I think we can probably wrap up with just one last question. Maybe Tommy, just starting with you. Yeah, what are you excited about in this next cycle? What games are you excited about? Yeah.
There's I think I'm still like gameplay first person, and I think right now actually we're looking at a lot of the mini games on Telegram, and we think it's a very interesting experiment. And whether or not, like I mentioned earlier, whether or not we can see a success of like a really thriving ecosystem like the WeChat mini games is still yet to be seen. And I think right now that we're seeing a lot of user traffic coming from the Telegram side, and whether or not we can convert that into some of the other games, through other funnels to Web3 games to drive like more robust like on-chain economy. I think that's what I'm really excited to see how this all phenomenon play out. And we're
awesome.
Keeping track in the monitoring the Telegram ecosystem very closely as well.
So Telegram, Ton. Jonathan.
For me, it's games that skew more hybrid casual to mid-core. I think first of all, they're more suitable for VC funding to begin with. It also fits very well with the whole concept we talked about how like the target audience and the bigger TAM, because younger audiences now have zero attention span. Like they have all like just brain rot from like TikTok, just like I do. So you have to cater to that audience. So shorter session times, lower barriers of entry, so they can onboard easily. And then once they onboard easily, and then you can lock them in with like content network effects or whatever social network effects there are. And then with integration of like Web3, that is very like well thought out. Why does this actually need Web3 is one of the key questions like we always ask like companies. And the companies that actually get funded are usually those like with a very novel idea of why Web3 actually makes this game better than it was if it was just purely in Web2.
Joe?
Yeah, +1 to what Jonathan said. I think the hybrid casual mobile scene, especially in Asia region, is exciting. I would add that like I think to add on to the hybrid like loops that Web3 can kind of enhance, it's also interesting to think about how Web3 can potentially reduce CPIs, and then you take a percentage of that reduction and give it back to the player. So to kind of combat this reducing time, attention spans, and highly competitive market, well, I think the idea of rewarded play is going to get a bit more relevant within the industry. The other, I think, I'm super excited for AA and indie. Like, I think AAA right now is a tough market, to put it lightly. Live service, there's just like tons of live service games coming out right now. And so this idea of like, quote unquote, throwaway indies where you can just sit down and enjoy it for 10 to 30 hours, I think that's a really nice or interesting spot. It's a little bit less VC investable, but there are definitely teams that have proven that there's something there if you can get the risk reward right. And so yeah, rise of the AA indie titles.
Awesome. And any kind of last thoughts here on call it trends, but also they talked about hyper casual, AA. What other types of games are you excited about?
Yeah, any type that's involving like a multiplayer, as long as like, because token itself is associating with like community, so you needed to have that community working together. If it's a single mode, then we don't really think there's a necessary needed to have a token. So quite a few of our portfolio actually at the entertainment zone booth. So if you wanted to check out like E for Salvations, which is a simplified like a League of Legends embedded with like a Web3 elements, and also Arrowwoods is actually coming out with the Ghost in the Shell IPs, and also Moonfell, there's a tower defense, and also a PUBG mode. So yeah, just here to promote our game. So if you wanted to learn something about Web3 games and also the quality about the Web3 games, please visit the YGG Japan like a zone booth, which is also like sponsored by YGG. So please check out the game over there and learn about the latest like Web3 games.
Awesome. So I think that's a wrap. Thank you all for coming, and come find us after.
Thanks.